Hey, welcome to another episode of the Overcome University podcast. I'm your host, Michael Allison. Today, we are thrilled to have Alan Draper, a successful entrepreneur who has built multiple multi-million-dollar companies. He's an entrepreneur that has been successful, has his own fair share of adversities, and is here to talk to us about some of the things that he's been through his life and share some tips and some advice on how to get through some of those challenges. Hey, Alan, welcome to the show, man.
Thanks, Michael, for having me. I'm excited to chat with you. Looking forward to this.
Man, thank you for being here, man. Being an entrepreneur is not an easy task for anybody to take on and for somebody to raise their hand to actually do that. If you can, tell us a little bit about your background and what even sparked that for you to even get into this entrepreneur journey, man.
I think the longer that I'm in it, the more I realize that entrepreneurship isn't so much what we do with our lives as it is a part of who we are. It's,
Mhm.
at least for me, I'm a father. I believe in God. I'm an entrepreneur. And it's, and I think I discovered that when I no longer had to work to put food on the table.
Mhm.
And I just kept doing it, and people told me I needed to get hobbies, and I told them this is my hobby. But when I was a little kid, I would sell candy bars door to door. I'd knock on neighbors' doors to offer to rake their leaves or shovel their snow or whatever. So I think I started realizing it when I was pretty young. And there were points in my life where I kind of got sidetracked with other things. I actually went to law school and I practiced law for a few years before really jumping in both feet into entrepreneurship and starting a business.
Wow, wow, wow. So I want to touch on something because everybody thinks that entrepreneurship is kind of like easy, and you just kind of
Hmm.
mentioned for you in regards to like some of the things that you've been through. If you could talk about what is it for you when you think about some of the challenges and some of the sacrifices that you had to make to even get started to building multiple different types of companies, man.
Dang, it's like my assistant asked you to ask me this question because I just finished the first draft of a book that is about all of the sacrifices that's required to build a successful business.
Right.
And what's funny, Michael, is that the book is motivational.
Mhm.
It's not designed to talk people out of starting businesses. But the problem that I had when I started my business is that I I messed up on what I thought the sacrifices were that were
Mhm.
required. So things like, I had a young family at the time, still do, but when I started my first business, I had a 2-year old and a 4-month old, and there were multiple days where I didn't see them. They'd wake
Mhm.
up after I left, they'd go to bed before I got home, and that was something that I didn't necessarily need to do, and I think I would have still achieved the same level of success. So
Mhm.
my book goes through these 14 sacrifices that are required, and they include things like you're going to have to sacrifice financial security. I remember before I started my first business, I was practicing law. I got frustrated with a client. I kind of huffed and puffed back to my office, slammed my door, sat down on my desk, and I thought, I can't wait till I start my business because I'm going to have more control over my time and I'm going to have more money. Those are the two thoughts that I had. And
Right.
as soon as I started my business, I realized that I had less of both of those things. I had less money and I had less control over my time. So, um, there's all these things that go into it, and but with each sacrifice there's a corresponding benefit. Sacrifice to me is sometimes a misnomer, because
Mhm.
if there's anything difficult in our lives, it's you're really hard pressed to find something that's difficult that you didn't get more out of than you put into. And sacrifice means I'm exchanging something greater for something less. And I
Definitely.
use the word throughout my book, but it's not really a sacrifice if we get something out that's greater than we put into it. And entrepreneurship is certainly that.
Most definitely. That's how I kind of look at some of the challenges and adversity. If there's always a lesson or something within going through that challenge as you're going through that phase, going through that journey, or just going through that valley that you're in. You mentioned about like your book and in regards to like how it motivates. And I know we're talking that you're a business owner and a serial entrepreneur. If you could give our audience a glimpse in regards to you made a lot of sacrifices. So give our audience a glimpse into some of the business that you've started, some of the companies that you've created to where you're at now today, man.
Yeah, so I've been investing in real estate since 2007. So before the crash, I basically entered real estate at the worst
Hmm.
possible time in my lifetime. I still own those properties that I purchased back then. Um, my first business outside of real estate was actually in the pest control world.
Hmm.
I quit my legal job in Phoenix, Arizona, and I moved to Detroit, Michigan to start a pest control company. We've been doing that for over a decade now. And then since then, over the last 5 or 6 years, I've gotten involved in about 28 to 30 other businesses. I own a product company that pitched to Shark Tank a couple of years ago. We got a deal from Lori. I own a digital marketing agency called Lizard SEM. I own an online course called Bug Bucks. I own a software company. I'm an angel investor. I'm a named partner in a law firm. I do some business consulting. The list kind of goes on and on.
Man, what a fleet of a portfolio that you've accomplished, man. I'm gonna say that for someone to do that, it takes a lot of betting on yourself. Can you share with our audience what are some of the key aspects when it comes to taking risk and betting on yourself that you had to develop for yourself that you could share with our audience that they would need to implement into their lives or create into their lives too as well if they're going to start taking some risk to bet on themselves too, man?
That's such a great question, and it's an important topic because my confidence has evolved over time. My confidence used to be based on my successes. Like, hey, look at these are the things that I've done. When I was studying for the bar exam in Arizona, my wife was in the hospital, and so I missed all my classes that I paid for because I was studying in the hospital. She was having health issues, and that was a really big thing for me. 12, 13 years ago was, man, I can do anything. I passed the bar exam while I was studying in a hospital, and it's not bad to think like that. But
Mhm.
since then, especially in business, I think my confidence has evolved and developed to reflect more of how I handle difficult situations because they come up every day, all the time, and in directions that you're not familiar with or you don't expect. And so that's kind of my new level of confidence. It's not necessarily I'm confident in the things that I can accomplish, but I think the things that I can accomplish really depend on how can I handle stress and how can I handle these adverse situations. And so, for me now, it's something happens and it's just not a big deal anymore like things used to be 10, 13 years ago.
Absolutely. What do you believe is some of the most common mistakes people make when they're trying to build wealth, and how do you avoid them for yourself?
There's a couple of big ones when you're building a business. Well, we can talk about building wealth when we talk about building a business. When you're building a
Okay.
business, you make the mistake with personnel a lot. You
Hmm.
get the wrong partners, the wrong investors, the wrong personnel on board. Those are the biggest mistakes I made. But on the flip side of that, those are some of the best decisions I've made too, with the partners that do work out, the personnel that do help me build my companies. Um, and then within a business, also making mistakes. I feel like one of the most common mistakes people make is they pull money out of their business too quickly to support a more lavish lifestyle.
Hmm.
I like to scale companies, and in order to scale a company, you need money. And so I continue to pay myself very little for multiple years and just reinvest those profits into into the companies.
Wow.
Regarding building wealth, people make so many mistakes. And um, about 20 years ago, I started on this path of learning what it was like and what was required to build wealth. Now,
Hmm.
I grew up in a small farming community on the Oregon Idaho border, and poor is a really strong word. And I don't think I would say that, but we were lower middle class.
Hmm.
We were really hand to mouth, never had any extras. My kids get all their pads for football, helmet, all that stuff paid for up front. They have their own gear. I never had my own gear. I always, whatever the school had or the organization I borrowed, that type of thing. But we did fine, and I'm so thankful for my background. But over the last 20 years, I wanted to learn what it was that separated the wealthy from those who weren't.
Mm-hmm.
And so I read probably over 100 books about business and wealth.
Mm-hmm.
And Michael, I started to learn threads, and I noticed patterns
Mm-hmm.
in these books. I didn't invent these ideas, but over the last 20 years, I kind of compiled 10 laws that govern money and that govern wealth, because I learned that just like if I climbed to my roof and I reached over and I dropped a pen over the side, we all know what's going to happen.
Right.
The pen's going to fall and hit the ground.
Mm-hmm.
That's called the law of gravity, right?
Mm-hmm.
There are laws that govern money, just like there are laws that govern our physical world. And I put together 10 laws, and this was kind of a side pet project for me. And the 10 laws are on my website, alandraper.com. But there are things like save 10% of what you make and never spend it, regardless of how much you make. And investing is not spending. Make sure to give 10%, at least 10% of everything you make, give it away, give it to a charity, give it to a church, give it to, somebody, and never expect to be repaid. And so there's these 10 laws that are based on history, and they're based on studies and data that show that it's nearly impossible, if you follow every one of those 10 laws, to not become wealthy.
Well, thank you for that, man. For our audience that's listening, make sure you go to his website and check out those 10 laws, man. So, Alan, I want to jump into something that you spoke about earlier in regards to like building all of these different successful businesses. How do you personally, or you and your team, identify good opportunities and the right opportunities for you guys to invest in?
What's funny is that right before I started recording the podcast, I was compiling some data about an investment portfolio that I have, because my accountant had texted me early this morning asking about that particular company. And my very first investment, I lost 150 grand. It went to zero. So I've learned a lot, and I'll talk about what I know, but I don't always win. A lot of my investments, especially my angel investments, because they're in startups, they're riskier type investments. It's sometimes it's like throwing darts at a board. You just try to get quite a few out there. But I look at the founding team. I want to know, are these the types of people that they're going to run into a struggle and they're going to take it head on? So one thing that I've seen with my successful companies is that those founding leaders and managers, they don't have problems with roadblocks. They run through them, and they just keep going. If they have a really hard day, they wake up the next day like it's day one. I look at how they spend money. I want to know if they're using money wisely and they're making smart financial decisions. And I want to know that they can sell. What is the go-to-market? What is the marketing strategy? I'm not really big on business plans. I'm more interested in marketing plans and go-to-market strategies.
Absolutely. Thank you for that, man. When you're looking at business, right, and I think this may even tie into some of the 10 laws that you just talked about, but can you explain to our people that are new business owners, or people that might even be some seasoned business owners out there too as well, what is the difference between good debt and bad debt? And then how does business owners leverage that and use that wisely?
Yeah, great question, man. I feel like my assistant set you up for this one too, because my 10th law that governs money is that you must use debt wisely. And there is a big difference. So the real question is, am I borrowing to make money, or am I borrowing to cost myself money, right? So if I borrow so that I can start a business, that's good, right? Or I borrow to buy a house, that's good. So, because it increases my net worth. I mean, that's the idea. Businesses fail, but that's the idea. If I borrow money, and look, I love cars, and if you want to check out some of the cars that I've got, go to my social media. I'm at real Alan Draper on Instagram, and I have some really, really nice cars, but they are a terrible investment.
Hmm.
right? They're not an investment. So if you borrow to, get a car, that's not a wise use of your funds. So the question is, are you using debt to buy a liability like a car, or
Hmm.
using debt to buy an asset like a house or a business? Um, and then I think there's another step to that part of using debt wisely, and that is whatever asset you buy or whatever investment you make with that debt, are you managing it wisely and are you making good decisions? So it's not just, hey, I'm borrowing to buy this company. I'm closing on another company next week, actually. And I'm borrowing from one of my other companies. But that company that we're buying, we're going to manage it properly.
Right,
We're
right.
not just going to, let it self manage. So that's the other aspect. People have to be really, really careful with debt. It's a lot like prescription meds. They're really good in the right situation and if they're managed properly. But debt, if it's not managed properly, it can get bad real quick.
Absolutely, man. Thank you for that. When it comes to running and operating multiple different businesses, can you talk a little bit about for yourself? How do you strike a balance when it comes to like running a business? You mentioned earlier that you're a dad, you have sons that's in football, you have a wife, and
Yep.
all those different things, man. So how do you strike a balance for yourself now as a business owner, man?
Yeah, it's taken me years to figure this out, and I'm very cognizant of how I'm spending my time. I recently read a book by Dan Martell called Buy Back Your Time.
Hmm.
I read a book by Dan Sullivan called Who Not How.
Hmm.
And I also have a list of, I get asked all the time, hey, Alan, what are the best business books, financial books, leadership books, personal development books? And so after a while, I just put them on my website. So for my recommended books, you can also go to my website. There's a Meet Alan page at alandraper.com where you can just see what books I recommend. When my book gets published in the next 3 or 4 months, I'll add that to the list. It's not there yet, but um, I've learned over the years that I don't know that balance is what we're going for, right? And we use that word, and I understand how we use it, but we need to look at balance in terms of 10 years, not balances in this week. Because I have weeks where, man, I just grind, and then I have weeks where I'm just with my family, and when I'm with my family, I'm not worrying about work. And so one of my favorite authors, his name's Rory Vaden, he came up with this idea called embracing the focused imbalance. So entrepreneurs need to do that because we can't keep getting distracted and worrying, hey, did I spend the same amount of time working as I did with each of my kids? Right now, man, I spend a lot of time with my kids.
Hmm.
I'm one of my son's football coaches, and we have practice 5 nights a week for 2 hours. And then there's preparation before and then after and all these things, and then games on Saturdays. So, um, right now, that's the season of life I'm in. So but when you're building a company, you don't have that luxury. You don't. You have to jump in both feet and really grind, and accept it. And I think the biggest thing, especially for us dads and for us parents, spouses, for those of us in relationships,
Hmm.
we have to be kind to ourselves. We have to allow ourselves to be like, you know what? I told myself I was going to spend 30 minutes with my son last night and I didn't do it, and that's okay. I'm going to make it up, but I'm going to allow myself that grace so that I don't just beat myself up, because then that just continues the pattern.
Most definitely, man. So I've had the opportunity to be in some interesting conversation when it comes to like mergers, acquisitions, working with different brokers, and even looking at different franchises. And I'd asked you earlier in regards to like what are some things and qualities that you look at when it comes to acquiring a business. Can you talk a little bit about now what are some of the qualities and things you look for when it comes to working with different business partners? Because I think that's important too as well.
So I was speaking a little bit about what I'm looking for when I'm making an angel investment or some type of investment in the company. I'm
Hmm.
looking at that founding team. And so the number one thing, if I'm partnering with a business and we're doing a startup, um, I'm looking for somebody again with that mentality that, hey, I'm going to have a really bad day, and the next day I'm going to wake up and just get back at it. Being that level of tenacious is difficult and it's rare. And maybe it's not one day, maybe there's a couple of days where there's this gap of kind of getting back to it. But I'm looking for that because if you think about it, if I find somebody that encounters a problem and they figure out a way to solve it and they don't give up,
Mm-hmm.
it doesn't matter what the problem is. So nothing outside of that really matters. I need people to be honest with me. I've had partners steal from me in the past.
Mm-hmm.
I've had to sue partners. I have been sued by partners. Now, keep in mind, I used to be a litigator, so lawsuits to me they don't have that emotional aspect that they do for a lot of people. They a little bit, but not quite as much. But I'm looking for, somebody that's like they don't immediately go to, all right, there goes the company. It's, hey, Alan, let's sit down and have a conversation. Like, can we talk to each other?
Mm-hmm.
And have really difficult conversations. There's people that can't do that, Michael. I've
Mm-hmm.
learned that. There's people that they won't answer your phone call, and they'll just kind of shy away until it gets too late. So you
Mm-hmm.
have to be able to talk to your partners. You need partners that won't give up. You need partners that are bought in, and then you also need partners that have shared vision of the
Mm.
company. Like, not just like, hey, how much money are we going to make? It's like, hey, in 10 years when neither of us have to work anymore, what do we want? Like, what
Mm.
what do we want this company to be? What's our legacy going to be? And sometimes that comes with meeting in the middle a little bit and having that communication to talk it out.
Most definitely, communication is one of the number one key aspects when it comes to the leadership. I do believe. So, Alan, I know that you're a man with some very strong opinions, right? And one of them was around colleges and higher education. Can you tell
Yeah.
us a little bit or dive into this topic in regards to why do you feel that college is a waste of time and money for those who want to either get into entrepreneur, get into business, or do different things in life, man?
Yeah, so I always say that I'm going to try to convince my kids to not go to college. And now keep in mind, this is coming from somebody that spent a long time in college, right?
Right.
I took 5 years to do my undergrad, and then I did an additional 3 years of law school. Um, but but if my daughter, she's like, hey, I want to be a veterinarian, or I want to be a doctor, I want to be
Hmm.
an engineer. Okay, well, you have to go to college for that, and I get it. But what happens is a lot of young folks are like, I don't know what I want to do, and the
Hmm.
system just pushes them into college.
Right.
And a lot of it occurred because my parents' generation, they had the opportunity to go to college. A lot of them had to get into work. My dad had to stay on the farm just to support his family.
Hmm.
Um, and so it was a badge of honor for our parents. Yeah, my son's in college or whatever. And then the Department of Education came out with subsidized loans, right? Federally backed loans. And
Hmm.
then what do you know? Tuition shoots through the roof.
Hmm.
So I have just a big time problem with student loans and things like that, unless there's a direction. I just see so many kids graduate or even not graduate, and they have, 30, 50, $100,000 worth of student loans, and they're making just above minimum wage, or they're not working in their field. So I think people should go out, find something that you like to do. I always tell people, hey, I'm 44 and I'm still trying to decide what I want to do with my life. How's a 19-year-old, 18-year-old kid supposed to decide? There's so much that you can do in just going to work and figuring out what it's like. And this is especially true in business. Now, you get an MBA from Harvard, you're going to know some stuff. But
Hmm.
those types of jobs, um, maybe not Harvard specifically, but a lot of MBAs or undergrad business degrees, they'll help you work within a corporation, a larger company that's looking for somebody to help analyze data or produce a
Right.
spreadsheet or whatever. But in terms of entrepreneurship, and there are some decent courses out there. To be honest with you, tonight I'm speaking at the Arizona State University's entrepreneurship group, and they have some really sharp kids there. But so much of it is tough to learn because it's case, geo, and person specific. So it's different from one person to the next. And so you can't really learn entrepreneurship from a book or from a professor. It's like, can 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 they teach you what salt tastes like? Can you read what salt tastes like in a book? No, you just
No.
got to go taste it. And then we all know, okay, now that's what salt tastes like. That's entrepreneurship, man.
That's such a profound point. As you were saying that, it just was resonating with me with my parents. So I'm from Jamaica, and our family is immigrants, and we came here to America, and we was trying to figure things out. And was the number one thing that my family pushed was education, education, education. So it was always the thing where all of us had to go to college. For me, I didn't go to college. I joined the Marine Corps, joined the military. Eventually, I went to college afterwards. But even after I got out of the military, it was always in my mind that I have to go get a degree. I have to go and get a degree. And you're so right about that.
Yeah.
I want to follow up on something that you said, and you're actually going to go speak about it tonight. So for someone that that said they don't want to go to college, right? So how do you motivate someone? How do you speak to someone that may have a business idea and they don't know where to start, but they want to start their own thing. They want to get into business and they don't want to go work for anybody. What is it that you would say to that listener that's listening, that's kind of thinking about it? They're kind of on the fence right now, man.
So I think we would start with coming up with a timeline and a little bit of a plan. We want to figure out what are the resources that we have. Sounds like this individual probably has some time on their hands, which is really good because there's a lot of information out there that's free. So let's figure out like, hey, what is the industry? What is the problem that we want to solve? What's our timeline to launch? What are our resources? What type of money do we have? I like bootstrap businesses. I like when there's no strings attached, you don't have investors, you don't have debt, and you're just trying to, use the resources that you have and just you start slow and then build it. But I would start there. And then I would probably take a step back and say, why? Why do you want to start a business? Well, I want to be rich. Okay, well, it's going to take you a while. Let's be honest. If you build a good company, you can make a lot of money. I think most millionaires in the United States are business owners and real estate investors.
Right.
But there's a way to do it. It's just not as fast as Instagram makes it seem. It's not like the first year, all of a sudden you're on a private jet. And I can't stand that. It really bothers me that the younger folks now, they think if they don't do $1 million in their first year revenue in business, that they failed.
Yeah.
So let's create the right expectation. My book talks about that. It talks about getting rid of some of those fallacies that we see on the internet because they're just not true and somebody's just trying to sell you a course.
Exactly.
So let's get a plan. Let's get a timeline. And then we need to get to the point where we just go for it. We don't, my first business failed, Michael. I started a pest control company before I went to law school. It failed. Law school was my backup. So like failure, that's another word that I think is a little bit of a misnomer. It's not, failure is it final is the question. And for a lot of entrepreneurs, it's like, that's a stepping stone, and so we need to figure that out. And then we need to cut the parachute strings at some point. Right. A lot of times I say that starting a business is like, having the materials to build a plane, jumping off a cliff and building it on the way down. That's a lot of, and sometimes you don't make it, and that's okay because you can bounce back.
Definitely. I agree with you, man. When I got into business, I decided to buy a franchise. Started off great, and then I decided this was not for me, and I had to sell the franchise back. And in addition to that, I love the bootstrapping aspects. That's exactly what I did with this company that we have. I built this company with strictly my veterans benefits that I was getting from the military. You know what I mean? So I agree with you in that aspect. I want to ask you and follow up on something that I saw that you had mentioned, and you had talked about taking someone with you on your entrepreneur journey. And I want to ask you, why is that so important with taking somebody with you on that journey?
Yeah, so that's one of my core values that I try to live by. I have some businesses that I own by myself with my wife. She's very passive, not interested in business or really money or anything like that. But then I have a lot of business partners. I think I have 24 business partners currently, and I have some that are no longer my business partners. It's hard, man. It's really hard. But I look back and I get the question a lot, like, either with time or money or whatever. Hey, Alan, how did you do it? How are you able to do all this stuff? And the secret, that's not so secret, is my partners. I own a digital marketing agency. I founded it, but what I did is I sought out people with technical knowledge. I'm not a marketer per se. I don't have that technical knowledge. And so I've partnered with people, and my partner, Matt Rogers, he's incredible. He's so different. His skill set is so complementary. I'm a logical, linear, numbers type thinker. He's creative, and he understands Google AdWords and what's required to build a beautiful website.
Mhm.
So when you find a partner that can that can complement your skill set, and you have a shared vision,
Mhm.
and you're able to communicate, dude, you're just building relationships that last a lifetime. To tell you the truth, I found him. I'd never met him before. He lives in Charlotte, North Carolina. I live in Phoenix. I don't get to see him very much. We talk almost every day, but I've built this relationship that without that ability to have a partnership, a
Mhm.
business partnership, I would have never been able to build. A lot of people, and I've done this too, where they're friends with somebody or they know somebody first, then they build a business. That
Mhm.
can be tough. Partnerships are tough generally,
Right.
but a couple of my partnerships, they were my business partners first. I vetted them out. We went through the interview process, make sure our goals were aligned, and then they became my friends. And my business partners are my best friends. They're the ones I travel with, vacation, family, all of that. Like next week, I'm going on a golf trip with one of my business partners. That was my business partner first, friend second. That
Mhm.
was 8 or 9 years ago. I met him. At the end
Awesome.
of the month, I'm going on a trip, Ohio, Michigan, with business partners. So um, I say take someone with you, because the journey is a lot less lonely, especially during the low and high times when somebody's along with you.
Most definitely, man. I want to follow up on that because as you're going on this road to success that you're leading, right? I do find that oftentimes people fall off and people drop off, and it for whatever reason in regards to that journey that you're on. Can you speak towards as you're going on your journey, like you've lost people along the way, and some people may be in it for you, some people are in it for the wrong reasons. How important is it to make sure you surround yourself and govern yourself accordingly with the right support system that's going to help you see you towards the end of your goals?
Yeah, it makes a really big difference, because I mean, it's cliche to say that you become the 5 people you spend the most time with, or whatever number of people that is, but it's true. You start talking like them, you start acting like them, their habits become yours and yours become theirs. And you want to make sure that you have those types of people that encourage you, and I think more than anything, that hold you accountable.
Right.
um you want those people that if you have food on your face, they'll tell you, right? And and those are the best kinds of friends. And some of my partnerships in the past that didn't work out, they didn't agree with that aspect. They didn't agree with hey, we're here to lift each other together. And
Mhm.
sometimes that requires difficult conversations. Sometimes that requires us to admit um, things that we wouldn't admit before, that are embarrassing. That's one of the sacrifices I talk about in my book, is that your life becomes it's put under a magnifying glass when you start a business. People start learning things about you, especially your employees. You start learning stuff about yourself. When you put yourself out there, you can have all these preconceived notions of your strengths and your weaknesses. And man, I got slapped in the face time and time again, realizing that what I thought about myself was
Uh-huh.
not actually the case. I got this really good feedback. And then as entrepreneurs, we have the decision. Can we can we accept that? Take a couple of deep breaths, because it's a blow.
Mhm.
Take a couple of deep breaths, accept it, and make a change, or do we just reject it and fight against it? And so when you surround yourself with really great people, they lift you up and they help you get better. And it's not always in the ways that we think. It's not always through compliments.
As we get ready to wrap up here, Alan, what is next for you, man? What are some big goals? What are some of the next things that you have planning coming down the pipeline? Like you said, you're a very young man, 44 years old. So I know that there's so much more to come to your life and to your career, man.
Yeah, so going to get my book published in the next few months here. That's at the top of the priority list. I'm scaling a few companies that it looks like we might have an exit in the next 3 to 5.
Mhm.
I'm probably going to start an investment fund of my own in the next 3 to 5 years. I'm going to continue to invest in startups. I'm going to continue to support and help young entrepreneurs. That's something that I'm passionate about. And I'm really enjoying family life, man. I'm enjoying watching my kids grow up. I enjoy spending time helping coach them. And so I don't work the same hours that I used to when I started my first company. And I'm looking forward to helping them develop and grow and just helping those around me. I think that's my legacy, and that's where I'm going to spend a good chunk of, the rest of my life, both personally and professionally.
Absolutely, man. And I pray that all that does come true for you, man. The next thing is here. What are some key takeaways? What are some lessons that you could leave with our audience for them to just take some tidbits, some nuggets that they could start implementing and taking some actions with?
Yeah, I think, look, it's going to be hard, whatever you do. If you think about the best things in your life, they're all hard. Your relationships, your job, any type of physical activity, whatever. Those moments are the most beneficial. So, especially with starting a business, I want you to know it's going to be hard, but you should do it anyway. Um, and then I like to say that um, that regret is a lot less scary. Sorry, risk is a lot less scary than regret.
Hmm.
So a lot of people think it's do I risk it or do I not? And then I'm at neutral, and that's just not the way it works.
Hmm.
Once you get a thought into your mind, if you don't pursue it, there's a loss opportunity cost there. So risk is a lot less scary than regret.
Definitely, man. So how can people find you? How can they book you, get you on their podcast, get you on stage to speak, man, and work with you?
Yeah. So my website's a great place to reach me. I have a speaking tab there where you can book me, have all my socials. I'm very active on Instagram. I'm at Real Alan Draper. Pretty easy to find. For the young entrepreneurs out there, people looking for startup capital or for people looking to start or grow their businesses, I have a couple of free 15-minute sessions weekly. You just go to my website. There's a contact me page where you can link up with my Calendly and get on my schedule.
Guys, you heard it first, man, from the man here that we just interviewed. He's willing to help with you, work with you on your business, man. Alan, it's been a pleasure to have this conversation with you, man. Thank you, brother.
Thank you so much, Michael. Appreciate you.
You're welcome, man. Until next time, guys, God bless.
Ain't it all? Couple dollars in my pocket, no income and go. Been working on my body, getting healthier. Thank God for clarity.